What if I told you that a simple economic curve, something you probably slept through in your first week of Econ 101, can actually predict when a society is about to break? It sounds a little crazy, I know, but we're not just talking theory here. We're talking about a tool that literally maps human satisfaction against cold, hard financial reality. And what if that very same map is telling us that millions of households are being pushed closer and closer to a financial cliff, with a potential impact date pointing right at 2026? Stick with me here, because what I'm about to show you could completely change the way you see this entire economy. And hey, a really quick before we dive in, if you get something out of explainers like this, the ones that connect the dots between theory and the real world, please think about subscribing. It really does help us make more of these. Okay, let's get into it. Today, we're taking a tool that was designed to explain really simple consumer choices, and we're going to use it to uncover a warning signal that almost nobody is talking about. Because when you connect this analysis to what's actually happening with inflation, debt, and interest rates, you start to see a pattern that looks, well, eerily similar to what happened right before other major crashes. First up, we've got to understand the core concept. Now, I know it sounds academic, but I promise you it's actually a very human, very intuitive idea. So, what on earth is an indifference curve? To put it simply, it's just a line on a graph that represents all the different mixes of two things that would make you equally happy. The idea is, you'd be indifferent to choosing any point along that curve. Let's just look at the visual for a second. See that curve? At one end, you might have a lot of good Y and not much good X. At the other end, you've got a ton of good X, but very little good Y. The theory says your total satisfaction, your happiness level, is exactly the same at both of those points. And two goods doesn't have to be, apples and oranges. Think bigger. It could be the trade-off between essentials like food and housing versus, well, everything else. It could even be the balance between your free time and the money you make. Now, here's the crucial part. Why does the curve bend like that? Well, in simple terms, the more you give up of something you don't have much of, the more of the other thing you need to make up for it. It's basically a map of how far people can be pushed before their satisfaction level has to drop. You could call it a map of sacrifice. Okay, so that's the map of what people want. Now, let's bring in the map of what people can actually afford. This is where the story gets really serious. Let's talk about the budget line. Your budget line is way simpler. It's just a straight line, and it represents the hard limit of your income. It has nothing to do with what makes you happy. It's all about what your wallet will let you do. This image shows it perfectly. See that straight line? That's your financial reality. Any combination of goods on that line uses up your entire budget. Anything inside the line you can afford, and anything outside of it is impossible. It's the wall. And here's the core problem we're facing right now. For millions and millions of households, that budget line isn't staying put. It's being squeezed, it's shifting inward, and it's shrinking the world of choices that people can actually afford. So why is it shrinking? Well, because inflation means real wages, what your money actually buys, haven't recovered since 2021. It's because interest rates have doubled mortgage payments, making housing the least affordable it's been in 40 years. And it's because consumer debt is at an all-time high. We're talking over $1 trillion just on credit cards. These aren't just headlines, they are real forces pushing that budget line down day after day. All right, now we get to the absolute heart of this whole thing. What happens when you put the map of satisfaction and the map of affordability on the exact same chart? Well, you find something called the economic breakpoint. Okay, let's look at this slide carefully. In a healthy economy, your budget line, that straight line, lets you reach your highest possible indifference curve. On this chart, that's curve IC2. That one single point where they just touch, that's the sweet spot. That's where you're getting the most happiness you possibly can for your income. But what happens when all those red flags we just talked about, the inflation, the interest rates, the record debt, what happens when they start forcing that budget line inward? The budget line shifts down, and suddenly it literally cannot reach that happy curve IC2 anymore. You are physically forced onto a lower curve, like IC1, which represents a lower level of satisfaction. You simply can no longer afford the lifestyle you once had. That forced drop, that is the breakpoint. It's the moment your financial decisions stop being about choice and start being about pure survival. And when this happens to millions of households all at once, it triggers a catastrophic chain reaction. Discretionary spending just collapses. Businesses see their revenue dry up, so they cut jobs. People can't pay their mortgages or their credit cards, so loan defaults spike. The banks get spooked and they tighten lending, which starves the economy of credit, and that is when the markets panic. Look, this isn't theory. It's the pattern before every major consumer-driven recession. It's the story of households being squeezed and squeezed until the entire system just fractures. And that brings us to 2026. You hear warnings from people like JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon about policy uncertainty, but the economic data itself paints an even clearer picture. We've got consumer savings rates back at 2008 levels, and the yield curve, a classic recession predictor, has been inverted for one of the longest stretches in history. The conditions are aligning. The model might be theoretical, but the data is pointing to a very real risk. So this really is the central question we're left with, isn't it? We see the mechanism, we hear the warnings, and we're seeing the economic data line up. The only question that's left is, how many households are already on that lower curve, and how many more are about to be pushed right over the edge? If this gave you a new way to think about what's going on in the economy, please subscribe for more explainers that go beyond the headlines. We really appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.